And we're talking fat, which is a bad word, isn't it? I mean, people think of fat. And, you know, fat has kind of been demonized in our society for so long as far as fat in our diet. And most people are confused, Tom, and they think fat gets you fat. In America, it's predominantly carbohydrates that get us fat. And the king of carbohydrate intake, as far as an American diet, are sodas. When we talked earlier about water, and Tom, a great point that you made, starting with these basic fundamentals, getting people to drink more water as number one. And then in turn, again, my big deal is watching the size and the frequency of your meals. The biggest mistake Americans make more than anything is over-consuming, and then pretty well over-consuming carbohydrates. And the liquid carbs, you're talking about a soda, a 12-ounce soda is 12 teaspoons of sugar. That's 3.5 ounces of sugar, Tom. So 4.5 pops, pound of sugar a day, and there's a lot of people that do that. So when we're looking at the carbohydrates and the simple sugars, that alone take people off the pops, and they lose 12 to 15 pounds. So you're right. You start with those basic fundamentals. But from there, the biggest mistake that especially women make, and we talked about it before the break, they wake up, they hate the way they look, they say, I'm not ever going to eat again, I'm going to lose weight. And what happens, Tom? What signals do you send the body when you all of a sudden stop eating? What happens physiologically to the body when you stop the food supply?
First off, your body knows that, and it says, this person is starving me. So how does it survive? It goes into all kinds of conniptions, but basically it starts to shut down.
Yes.
And so your thyroid will go even slower than it normally would be.
Metabolic rate slows.
Yeah, so,
everything slows.
So then, you know, the lady, she goes from being cool, now she's cold all the time, you know. So there went that. And so you're negating what you're trying to do.
Right.
And then what'll happen when you do eat, if you've ever had an animal and you've been around one that's sort of starved a little bit, you'll know what I mean. They eat their food real fast and they eat a whole lot of it, and it's harder to fill them up. So you're training your body into a
very good point.
Cycle.
Very good point. And what happens is not only do you slow the metabolic rate down, you send a starvation mode signal to the body to shut everything down, and then ultimately you're going to crack and eat again after 2 or 3 days of not eating. And then the metabolic rate is suppressed, all the systems are suppressed, and then like that starved dog you're talking about, when it starts eating again, it says, okay, we better put some of this back into the fat cells. That's where it wants to go. So ladies, when you're out there and you're not eating, that's the first problem, biggest mistake that you could make. Not only are you starving, not eating your good food, in a bad mood, but you're also not losing weight. So it's not a good sign and signal to send to the body. But here's what I try to convince people. Small meals. You know, because again, the biggest problem that Americans have, we go throughout the day, eat very little throughout the day because we're too busy. And then what do? At supper time, we eat like horses. And I read an article the other day, Tom, on sumo wrestling, of all things, sumus. They train them in the morning. In fact, you want to know why Americans look like sumus now? Because we're eating the sumo diet. Here's the way to train these guys. They train them in the morning, okay, very hard, and then they make them go without food. They don't feed them right, which really your best time to eat is after a workout because the body wants to put that back in the muscle. Well, they starve them for a time, slow their metabolic rate way down, and then feed them the bulk of their calories at night before they go to bed. Okay, so what happens? It stores all that back into the fat cells. So guys, if you're starting to look like a sumo, it's because you're on a sumo diet. So what you have to do is back off of that and eat frequent meals. And really the key to weight loss, or even weight gain like you're talking about, Tom, and weight regulation is I guess what we should say, is the frequency of those meals. And then the size of the meal as well. You know, if you're eating the size of your stomach, you know, like this, it expands, of course. In fact, these eating contests, which are one of the worst things to ever hit the planet, of how many hot dogs can you cram down your mouth in a minute, as we know, the stomach can expand to great expansion to as big as you possibly need it in some cases. But what happens when you eat a small meal, then in turn the body has enough digestive enzymes to break it all down and process it, and then you're giving the body a small amount that it can run off of. Any excess, as you know, Tom, is going where? Right to the hips. And women store it traditionally in the hips. In men, the old front porch, as we call it. You know,
women are more, they're somewhat all over, but yeah, you're right, the hips. But the men, we just wear it right out in front.
Front porches, as we call it. You know, and a lot of guys, I mean, the front porch is doing real good. The back half of the house has fell off, unfortunately. and the way to keep the back half of the house from falling off is to actually work out and continue to do the exercise part, which we've touched on here. But as far as the diet and weight loss, and when we talk food, again, you have to eat the right ways to lose weight, and you also have to eat the right ways to keep the body healthy. You could actually diet and eat, low calories and the right way and not really be healthy if you're eating the wrong food. So it's about portion control, the frequency of the meal, and then one thing too that we talked about, Tom, that I want to touch on here when it comes to weight loss and get your opinion. You've seen so many diets out there, from low carb to low fat,
right,
and even low protein with the Pritikin diet.
Right.
Pritikin was like, I think, no protein and all carbs, and I think he died of blood sugar problems, if I'm not mistaken. And so this is what happens. And then we have the high protein diet where you're eating nothing but meat, which is horrible, and then you have the no fat diet where you cut out all your fats. Tell me your opinion on this, because from what I've seen, it's not any of those. It's not cutting out anything. In fact, you're not going to benefit, in my opinion, by cutting out any of those food groups. You're actually going to be harmed when you do. So it's more about a balance between those, correct?
The thing that surprised me, the government reevaluated the pyramid. So everybody has a vision of a pyramid. And they kept all the grains and all the milk products and all that as our base.
Yes.
And gosh, Todd, I don't know how else to explain that other than, like, if you had like 200 calories of broccoli or something, you'd have like 8 cups. But if you have 200 calories of oatmeal, that's like maybe a cup and a half.
Right.
But they're wanting us to eat that cup and a half, and you know how full you'd be with that. But if you ate like 8 cups of broccoli, I mean, anyway. So let's have a different pyramid or something. So
yes.
let's have my pyramid. My pyramid would be, down here would be mostly vegetables.
Yes.
And then the next one, after you get to your weight, you want to reduce this one just slightly, but that would be fruits. But Todd, we're getting so intricate here, and then I would have the meats, lean meats, and then I would have some nuts up here.
Yes.
So the more intricate you get the diet or something, the more people just kind of give up. But if you could just see that pyramid of mine, you could eat like that now, and if you're heavy, you're going to lose, and if you're thin, you're going to gain. So there's my thing. But if you could just try, people, get off some of the grains, all the grains, just see how that feels. And if that's like gives you this feeling
empty
in your
feeling.
heart that's you can't explain, that's because you're sort of hooked.
You're sort of hooked. Exactly. You're a carbohydrate addict.
Yes,
exactly.
But
right.
if you could try to limit those, and they're very easily done, but they hide. So when we say wheat and corn, and that's in oils, the wheat's in pasta, the wheat's in cookies, it's in cake, it's in pizza, it's in bagels, it's in crackers,
and it is a carbohydrate, and that's what people have to understand is they say, well, I'm not eating a lot of sugar. Well,
right.
But if you're eating beans and corn, you're eating a lot of sugar, and it goes back to, and the best thing I've ever heard as far as weight loss, and it goes back to these to these simple analogies, is that if you're a 300-pound guy, your hand's going to be a little bigger than what a 200-pound female would be. So I take the palm size. And that's pretty well the easiest way to do it. When you sit down to eat, the meat portion should be about the size of your palm. The carbohydrate portion should be equally the size of your palm. But what do we see in a steakhouse? A guy eating a big steak and then this massive baked potato. And that's where we get in trouble, folks. And the rolls, the carbohydrates, exactly. So whenever you're talking about the food pyramid, and I love your pyramid, Tom, that's exactly the way it should be broken down. But if you want to fatten a hog up, folks, that's the way you do it, is to feed it according to the American government standards. Because you give anybody out there nothing but grains as the basis of their diet, you're not only going to gain a lot of fat, you're going to disrupt your friendly intestinal flora, you're going to mess with your blood sugar, the list goes, the inflammatory process starts to happen. It's not the way we were supposed to eat. We're supposed to be getting like a Mediterranean, check out the Mediterranean diet with the fish and the vegetables and the fruit sources. That's where we should be getting the bulk of our carbohydrates.
Well, the other thing we have to start thinking about, Todd, is, I don't want to, turn anybody off, but some of the vegetarians, I might start leaning way more towards them, because now guess what all of our animals eat? They're eating the grains. Right. So remember, I told you I wanted you to have the meats just the third one up. That may go halfway off the chart, because, even my hunters now, they go shoot a deer, but they've been feeding him corn for the last 6 months to get him to come up to the same spot. So you need grass-fed beef if you can. We need more range chickens.
That's a good point. It's the quality, and that's what we want to address, folks. We're going to wrap up a show when we come back, but we are going to do a show specifically about the quality of your food, and that's something that's extremely important, not only for cleansing the body, but overall health maintenance. Right now, we're talking about fat loss and weight loss. Hang on, folks. We'll come back and wrap up the show and try to make it, again, as simple as possible to give you the tips to regulate your body weight. It's confusing, guys. There's a lot of marketing hype, and we're trying to sift through it right here on Understanding Your Health. Hang on, we'll be back.